So thank you for listening, and I want to bring up our speakers for this morning. We've got Booth Babcock from Lululemon. So Booth, come up on stage. We've got Amy Harrison from Nike. Chan Lee from Chick-fil-A. And Karan Singh from GGP. So these guys represent a lot of different industries, a lot of different places. They've got some incredible stories to tell about what they've been doing and how they've been moving things forwards. And individually, you're all leaders. So Booth, you're first, so come on up and talk. So I had a great chance with Booth. We took him down to Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah, it was a good trip.
It was a good trip.
A lot of exciting things happening in Australia.
Yeah, and with Wayne and Gary Johnson, who's going to be talking later from Esri Australia. And your company, is a very interesting group, but before you joined Lululemon, where were you before that?
I was at Starbucks before that.
Yeah, huge company. Everybody knows them.
Yeah.
And
big, very sophisticated, well known for their analytics, well known for what they do with real estate and with geography. Very different world from working with a bunch of yoga instructors like I do now.
Yeah, like you do now.
Yeah.
So you've got the people that are about the brand and understand the customers and things, and you've taken what you knew from Starbucks and moved it forward.
Yeah.
So share that story.
All right, great. Thanks, Simon. So hi, everybody. I'm Booth Babcock. So I lead the market planning team at Lululemon Athletica in Vancouver. Simon's kind of a hard act to follow since he's been talking about big issues like evolution and language and the human condition. And I work for a company that is best known for making your ass look good. And that's also very, very important, but maybe not on the same scale. But we'll take credit for it. So over the rest of the day, I think you're going to hear from a lot of big organizations that are doing really amazing things with GIS and with analytics, with technology. And I think it's nice you get to hear me first because we're a very small company that's doing very small things, but I think having a big result. We are small, we're lean, we're a company that is really focused on community, but not necessarily on analytics and numbers and data. And so the real challenge for me in the organization has been how do we get them to start thinking analytically? How do we start to get them to start thinking geospatially and to sort of bring that kind of rigor and those kind of analytics into the company? Just a quick word for those of you that don't know Lululemon. We make yoga-inspired athletic clothing. We did about $1.5 billion in business last year. We've got about 250 stores in 5 different countries. And we're probably best known for making black stretchy pants. And that's something that we do quite well. The company was founded by a high-tech fabrics expert who took a yoga class in Vancouver, didn't like the way his clothes fit, and started working in his garage on coming up with something better. And as they say, the rest is history. And most of our senior management today is actually people who worked with him back in the old days. And a lot of the yoga instructors and salespeople at the yoga shop where he took that first lesson are now senior vice presidents within our company. So we've really had a lot of continuity over the years, and that's really helped us both to establish community with our guests, but also it's helped us to maintain a certain sense of authenticity because the product that we manufacture is the same product that we would like to use. It's also introduced some challenges, however, because our senior leadership definitely is coming from a position of yoga first and community first, and a lot of the things that you sort of think of as the business come second. And as we get bigger and more sophisticated, and as we spread around the world, and as we go from cool areas to less cool areas and all these other things, we found that we've really suffered from the fact that we have no data, no guest information, no processes, no tools. We really had almost nothing when I joined the company. And so my challenge has been how do we introduce those things without upsetting a culture that's working for us and that people like? How do we continue to live in the world of possibility, but still introduce a little bit of probability at the same time so that we can kind of improve the processes and get our systems down a little bit better? And for inspiration, I turned to an article, which I'm going to read the name of because I want to make sure I get it right. And it's called Fast, Cheap, and Out of Control, A Robot Invasion of the Solar System. And the phrase, you may be familiar with it because actually it was also the name of a movie, which also took its inspiration from this article. And the basic thesis of this article is that the way that we should be exploring the solar system is not by building these big, complicated machines that are very expensive and do lots of things and have to be controlled by like a room full of engineers in Pasadena. But instead, what we should do is build lots of little, tiny, cheap things that can only do one thing really well and do it autonomously, and then let's fling them out into the solar system. And yeah, most of them are going to crash and burn or get lost in space or whatever, but a few of them are going to land on the moon or wherever, and they're going to do their job, and the information is going to come back. And when you put them all together, in aggregate, it's going to equal success, and we're going to learn something, and we're going to colonize the solar system that way. This handsome fellow in the picture is one of the robots. And so what I wanted to do was kind of the same thing in our organization, which was to build a lot of small bits and pieces and turn them loose in our organization and see if we can't actually learn something about our guests and learn something about the world in which we operate. And so what happens when you put all that together is you get a toolkit. So when we started to build up our toolkit, kind of thinking back to fast, cheap, and out of control, we needed something that we could do very fast and very cheap. And we turned to the Esri Business Analyst Online and GIS Online tools because one of the things that we really liked about them is that you don't have to have a server, you don't have to buy software, you basically sign up for an account and instantly you have access to mapping, you have access to data. It's very easy to use. Our real estate guys in the field, not really software guys, don't want to do anything too complicated, but this is like point and click, you can learn it in 20 minutes, it was very easy. At the same time though, it's actually quite robust, and Business Analyst includes full data on every North American market. It actually had all the data that we needed. So we could take these two things, which are very inexpensive, and use that as a base from which to build all of our systems. Now, part of the reason why Business Analyst is fast and cheap is because it's the same tool for everybody, right? It's a generic tool, you get what's in there, what you see is what you get. So then we started to think, well, what are the other things that we need? What are the things that are custom that we need to do for ourselves? And we started building those tools on top of it, using it as a base. Just simple tools in Excel, no black box. So we needed a sales forecasting tool. We built a sales forecasting tool that pulls data out of Business Analyst, runs, and produces a sales estimate. We built a retail gravity tool to look at what is the sales potential for markets and submarkets, again, using the data as it just came straight out of Business Analyst Online. So using tools like this allows us to replicate all of the things that a more expensive and robust system would do, but at a very small cost and very quickly. And because it's all done in Excel, it's not a black box. We can change it whenever we want. We can make modifications, do whatever we want to with it. And so that's really served us very well. Another advantage to going small is that on the occasion when we misfire, which does happen, we haven't invested a lot of money or time. We just drop it and move on to the next thing. So that's kind of what our analytics framework looks like. And I thought rather than sort of just list off tools, it might be helpful to kind of go through an example of a project that we worked on, and talk about some of the insights that we gained. So the project that I'm going to talk about is one that we initiated early on in my time with the company, where we wanted to take a look at who actually is our guest. And it seems like an obvious question. We're in the business of selling things. They're coming into our stores. We should know something about them. But unlike a lot of companies, we don't have loyalty cards, we don't have branded credit cards, and we don't like to survey our guests. And so as a result, what we really knew was what we thought we knew. And so the original people who started the company and were there in the early days, in their minds, the guest was still people like them, and like this woman in the picture, right? So she's 25 years old, but she makes $150,000 a year, and she runs 5 marathons a year, and she's like super cool, and everybody wants to be like her. And she probably lives in a cool loft, and she's in a neighborhood with lots of cool small-scale retail, and looks really awesome. And so like that's who's coming into our stores, and that's who's buying our product. Like awesome, right? That's all we're doing? Well, so we wanted to verify that. So what we settled on was the way that we would collect data is that we would ask a single question. So at the point of service, we would simply ask people, what's your postcode, or what's your zip code in the US? And then we'd enter that into our system, and that was it. And then what that let us do is actually attach transactional data to the postcode so that we could begin to create a sense of what every postcode or every zip code in North America generates for us in terms of sales. We could then pull out of Business Analyst all of the demographic data by zip code. So what are the core consumer segments? What are the income levels? What are the age levels? And we could start to create a picture of what is the guest profile of somebody living in the zip codes that are the most productive or the least productive for us. So the question is this really our most productive guest? And what we found was actually our guest is a little more diverse than we had initially thought. She is definitely still a customer of ours, but what we found is that actually when we look at where we make our money, our guest is a little bit older than we thought she was. Maybe not quite that old, but a little bit older, and we found that she's much more likely to live in the suburbs, and we found that she's much more likely to have kids. And that was a really important insight, because although we may still be designing clothes for sort of our original muse that we started with, there's definitely things that we can do as a company to better serve the suburban mom who also wants to be our guest and also wants to buy our product. And it could be anything from making the stores a little bit bigger so that you can get strollers in. It could be that maybe that not so cool suburban mall that we were turning our nose up at actually would be a great place to go so our guest doesn't have to drive all the way downtown and try to find parking. It could be like maybe we don't need to buy quite so many size 2s, need to buy a few more size 12s. Like whatever it is, like we could actually start to use this information to do a better job of serving our guest and really, you know, being who she needs us to be, not who we want her to need us to be. So what did we learn from this whole process? Well, I can guarantee you that I did not learn how to do this pose, and if I tried to do it, we would have to stop the process and bring in an ambulance. But some things that we did learn, a big one was we learned the value of starting small. Because we broke our project up into lots of little bits and pieces, it wasn't like we came into a meeting one day and said, for the next hour, you're going to learn how to change all of your processes, and it's going to be totally different. Nobody wants that. It doesn't work. Instead, we just kind of started to find the little problems. Well, what's this thing that's taking you too long to do? Well, let me go put together a tool that's going to like cut that time in half. Or what's this piece of data that you can't get? Well, let's see if we can find a better way to do it. In the old days, if we needed to ask a question that we couldn't easily find the answer to, that meant bringing in a consultant, and they'd go away for 2 weeks, and they'd come back with a PDF and an invoice. And that like really wasn't the way that we wanted to go. We really wanted to own those questions ourselves, and so this really helped us to do that. Other things that we learned, you need to be very careful about analysis paralysis, right? You all hear this phrase a lot. Just because you can find something out doesn't mean it's actually useful to find it out. Or another way I like to think of it is, people always say like there's no such thing as a dumb question, but that's not true at all. There are totally dumb questions in business, and a dumb question is a question where the answer doesn't actually cause you to do anything different. So be really selective in what's actually important, what actually do you need. And these kinds of tools can really help you with that, because what we found was the things that we thought were important weren't important. The things that we thought you needed to have near a store had no impact on our sales. And so by kind of changing those around, we could actually really narrow things down to like, these are the 4 or 5 things that are important. Let's really focus our energy on these and not be looking at all this other superfluous stuff. And then one final point that I always like to bring up that I don't know if Esri is that crazy about me bringing up, but I'll say it anyway, is that the world is full of free stuff. And like you should never feel like you have to pay for something. Data, GIS, tools, systems, training, all this stuff is out there for free. And what we learned was that the platform that we bought from Esri, we could take data that we can find for free from census websites all around the world and actually turn it into an international GIS system, which has been really great for us. So it's definitely worth like taking that extra step to look around a little bit and see what else is out there. So anyway, thanks for your time. I hope you found that useful. I totally like love this stuff, and so I'm quite happy to talk to anybody. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out. So, thanks.
Thanks, Bruce. Oh, stay here, man.
Oh, yeah.
So, first time I think arse has been said at the Business Summit. And this is why, you know, I had such good fun in Australia and New Zealand. But when we talked, you know, were you ever afraid of leaving Starbucks, this big ship, and kind of going to this small organization?
I mean, certainly Starbucks was a great place to work, and it's a great company. So I didn't, you know, I wasn't trying to get out for that reason. But I definitely liked the fact that at Lululemon, because it's small and it's lean, every single thing that I do directly impacts something that arrives in the field in front of a guest. And so that's, you know, one of the nice things about small companies is that you can really make a difference. Within Starbucks, you know, it's a much larger, more bureaucratic organization, and with anything you do is going to arrive in, I don't know, 20,000, however many points of sale they have at this point. So it's obviously everything is much more sort of run through filters as you go through. So it's kind of nice to be in a situation where I really feel like whatever I do, it matters.
Yeah, brilliant. And to all the future speakers, you can see you can give a great GIS presentation without a map in it.
Yeah.
So
Not even, no diagrams or anything.
No diagrams, no map,
Yeah,
no technology, just yogi positions.
Well, that's right. Well, everybody likes to look at people in yoga clothing, right? So can't go wrong.
Brilliant.
So,
Thanks,
right.
Steve.
Thanks.
Yeah.